DGen Nation fam, what's up? What's happening? It's your host or co-host of the DGen Nation podcast, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at @RyanAlexander_W. And I'm here to give you a breakdown of the TFA Contrarian Week 2 plays. It's an article that I did that I'm bringing to you straight to YouTube so that you can see the top 10 contrarian plays that I'm looking at for this Week 2 slate. Let's start it out with quarterbacks here. And for quarterbacks, I'm going with Big Ben. His price is about 6,300 on DraftKings, 7,500 on FanDuel. And he's a pivot play to all the top guys, right? Kyler, Dak, Matt Ryan. This is a guy who we've traditionally played at home on every DFS slate that we can get our hands on. He just passed for 32 times last week. He's got so many offensive weapons, whether it's Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, even the tight ends are getting some work. Eric Ebron, Chase Claypool. This over-under isn't looking that appealing right now. Right around the 43 range, I believe, is where it's coming at. But his home splits have been great. 50 more touchdowns over his career when he's playing at home with 20 less interceptions. DeCastro, the starting guard, is going to be out, so possibly he could be looking to pass more, and AJ Bouye on the other side is out for Denver. So Big Ben is definitely looking like a contrarian play for me in this offense that could put up 30 points anytime they're out on the field. Let's get into running backs. Okay, running backs, I got two plays for you. First is Saquon Barkley. Now, Saquon Barkley is getting a lot of traction in the fantasy industry, of course, but if you listen to Thursday's DGen Nation pod, Maddie Dickinson and myself, we talked about Saquon Barkley. He's 8,400 on DraftKings, 9,000 on FanDuel. He's a perfect pivot to guys like Derrick Henry, Zeke, and McCaffrey. He's a fourth price running back on DK, he's only the fourth price running back on DK, but the second highest price on FanDuel. And it makes just a perfect play on DK. This is a perfect bounce back spot for him going against the Bears in a road game where they're going to need him to get right in order to find ways to win this game. The Bears are in jeopardy of not having Khalil Mack out there. Robert Quinn missed practice, or Robert Quinn was a full participant in practice on Friday, but he's still questionable. If those two guys are out, then I don't see how Saquon Barkley doesn't pay off his price tag. He's only competing with guys like Darius Slayton for target. It's just a perfect bounce back spot for a team that just gave up a ton of plays and yardage to Adrian Peterson, who's damn near 40, and I just don't know how you don't get to Saquon Barkley this week. Perfect contrarian play there. The other guy is Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake is coming in at 5,900 on DraftKings and only 6,600 on FanDuel, which makes him the 13th highest price on DraftKings, 14th highest price running back on FanDuel. He checks all the boxes, being a home favorite. They have a high implied total to score there. He plays on the afternoon slate, so I think people are sleeping on him with Kyler, and I just wrote up Kyler in the article as he's one of my building blocks, but he's a perfect pivot play to Kyler as well, where you're talking about a guy who's a home favorite. He's going to see usage in the red zone. I know that there's concerns about him splitting time with Kenyon Drake, but in matchups last year when the Cardinals were heavy favorites and they were able to control the game, we saw Kenyon Drake get around 25, 26 touches in those games. And at 5,900, especially on DraftKings, when you're talking about he catches passes too, I just don't see a way that he doesn't find a way to pay off that price tag. Checks the boxes as well as being a home favorite. It just makes a ton of sense. Now, the starting center for Arizona is going to be out, it looks like, for this game, but potentially, we could see more passing work for him, which would definitely pay off dividends on DraftKings that we're looking at. Let's get into wide receivers here. Tyreek Hill, as I stumbled there, Tyreek Hill is looking like one of my favorite plays as well, too. We talked about him on the DGen Nation pod this week. 7,500 on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel. This guy has slate-breaking upside every time he reaches the field. The Chiefs' offense as a whole, it seems like, is being slept on this week. And I just don't get it. You talk about a guy with splits as well, too. His home road splits are crazy when you look at his road numbers. He averages about 80 yards on the road compared to 60 yards at home, and has, 19 touchdowns on the road as it compared to 14 touchdowns at home. This is an easy way to get exposure to Pat Mahomes if you're not paying up for him, and exposure to this Chiefs offense that can really put up 30 points, if not more, every time they see the field. I'm not sure why people are sleeping on this offense, but I definitely want exposure to them. And the fact that he plays on that afternoon slate when you have guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to get ownership, people want to play Julio Jones, the Dallas guys on the other end, it just makes a ton of sense to try and get exposure to this offense through him. My second guy at wide receiver, coming in to be one of my favorite plays right now, is Mike Evans. He's 6,400 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. It's just his price on DraftKings is way too cheap when you're considering that Chris Godwin's in concussion protocol. He has not cleared that yet. They haven't necessarily ruled him out, but the fact that it's Saturday and he still hasn't cleared concussion protocol, I just think they're going to be very cautious with him and not roll him out there. So you're talking about Mike Evans, who's going to be out there with only competing for targets from Tom Brady for the tight ends, of course, and O.J. Howard and Rob Gronkowski. But at the wide receiver position, guys like Justin Watson, Scotty Miller, who's garnering a lot of traction at his price and what he did in week one. But Mike Evans he's a stud, right? He's going to go out there. He's going to be able to take advantage of this Carolina secondary, who it looks like he'll be able to see Dante Jackson, who is the highest graded cornerback according to PFF, but he still only has a 60 grade. The other two cornerbacks that they're rolling out there are not graded anywhere over 50. So I think they're going to try and get them all over the field. And plus, you got coach speak, Bruce Arians coming out this week saying that if they are not getting double-digit targets to Mike Evans in games, that they're doing something wrong. So squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And Mike Evans comes in this week and should be under owned. He normally would be. So buy low on Mike Evans at his $6,400 price tag on DraftKings, especially. Speaking of another guy who is going way overlooked is DJ Moore. DJ Moore is 6,300 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. He disappointed in week one, so I expect his ownership to be low. But in that same game where we're expecting a lot of points to be scored, Vegas has this game as having a ton of points being scored in Carolina and Tampa Bay. DJ Moore should be right there. I mean, Christian McCaffrey with Teddy Bridgewater, I don't know if we're going to see the same Christian McCaffrey as we're used to seeing, where he just was utilized everywhere on this field. And especially going against Tampa Bay, who's very stout against the run, they're going to have to find ways to get creative and get the ball down the field. And that's where DJ Moore could come in against this team. He played well against this team last year, going out there, getting 9 for 89, 7 for 73 in games. Didn't score touchdowns, but, touchdowns are what they are. But if you're getting that type of production out of wide receiver on DraftKings, floor seems very nice for that price tag. And also to mention, he saw 2 red zone targets last week. Christian McCaffrey had 0. And only wide receivers were seeing red zone targets last week. So DJ Moore, love him as a contrarian play this week. And then finally for wide receivers, Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is going to be one of Ben Roethlisberger's favorite targets this year. The guy starts off the game last week, fumbling the ball on special teams, got off to a rough start there. But Ben Roethlisberger was trying every which way to get him looks. He out-targeted Juju last week 10-6. He comes in at only 4,500 on DraftKings this week because he played in that Monday night game. So, they already had released the pricing and they weren't able to adjust. 5,800 on FanDuel. I kind of like him there, but really on DraftKings, especially if I'm looking to play Ben Roethlisberger, I'm definitely going to have exposure to Deontay Johnson, who's a great pivot off of guys like Christian Kirk, who's going to see massive ownership, Paris Campbell going to see massive ownership, and CeeDee Lamb for Dallas going to see massive ownership. So Deontay Johnson looking real nice there. Let's go into tight ends. So tight ends is very interesting this week. There's a lot of value opening up with George Kittle being out. I know Jordan Reed will be, played. I think people want to play Dan Arnold. Shout out to my boys Kevin Maddie on the pod with me, who want to play Dan Arnold with Max Williams being out for Arizona. But I still think there's value to be had at the tight end position with guys who are priced, kind of just, they're not min price, but they're kind of in that middle tier range. And so first off is Hayden Hurst. He's 4,600 on DraftKings, 5,600 on Fan. This is able to get you exposure to this Atlanta-Dallas game that has the highest over-under on the slate, according to Vegas. And I haven't talked about any of the other options from that game, really, because they're all popular, right? And so the one person who's not popular here is Hayden Hurst, who he only saw 5 targets against Seattle, a team that you can target tight ends with, not the 12 that you were getting from Russell Gage, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, but still, he's finding his footing with Matt Ryan, and these guys in the offseason have been practicing together all the time. It was, led to Hayden Hurst being drafted in redraft leagues higher than, we normally would have seen. And I really do think that we're going to be able to take advantage of matchups with him. Now, you're looking at the Dallas defense here, and they're missing 2 linebackers from this game. And last year, you're looking at the defense that gave up the most targets to tight ends in the NFL. So when you're bringing in a guy who was on the field for nearly 80% of the snap, and he's only, he's cheap at a tight end position, where if you get a touchdown out of this guy, you're going to be sitting pretty with the amount of usage that he should expect to see. So Hayden Hurst, definitely love him. He's making it onto a ton of my builds as I build lineups for this week. And then the other guy who's in the 4K price range as well on DraftKings is Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was a guy who I loved coming into the year. Redraft, I thought that, he was going to definitely be utilized. They pretty much have A.J. Brown and just a whole other cast of characters. No disrespect to Corey Davis, who's going to be popular this week with A.J. Brown expected to be out. And you can get a pivot off of the Corey Davis chalk by taking a guy like Jonnu Smith, who played 72% of the snaps last week, saw a target share similar to guys like Zach Ertz, Rob Gronkowski, Evan Ingram. At this price tag, like the same thing with Hayden Hurst, you get a touchdown out of him and you feel pretty good about it. And just the fact that Tennessee, they're not really pass heavy with Ryan Tannehill, but they are going to pass fairly enough. And we saw a balanced attack against Denver last week. So Jonnu Smith is definitely one that I love. Finally, let's round it out. And surprisingly enough, a defense is going to make it into this contrary 10. And that's the Dolphins defense. Dolphins defense we talked about on the DJ Nation podcast. They were in our DJ Nation lineup, which will be tweeted out here sometime shortly here on Saturday going into the Sunday slate. So if you want to check that out and go follow the DJ Nation on Twitter. But Dolphins D, they're only 2,100 on DraftKings. That's really where I love them. You're looking at they're 100 over the min price of defense for the 2,000 range on DraftKings. There's 8 other defenses that are cheaper than them on FanDuel. So really, I really think they're underpriced for this matchup. They're going against Josh Allen, who is turnover prone, right? Josh Allen, he's turned the ball over already in week 1 this week. He's, consistently fumbling the ball, turning the ball over, has a ton of, I think he had 10 multi-touchdown games since the start of 2019. Multiple turnover games since the start of 2019. And even though he's had some success against this Miami defense in the past, at 2,100, all you're really needing out of this defense is about, 3, 4, 5 points for them they get you so many studs on DraftKings that it makes a ton of sense. And if they're able to, get a special teams touchdown or take one of these turnovers that we could, potentially pencil Josh Allen in for, take one of those to the house, you're sitting pretty, and you don't have to think. Defense is such a high variance position. We talk about that all the time. And I just really think that's a way that you could take advantage. So for my contrary 10 players, just to, recap, we got Big Ben at quarterback, Saquon Barkley and Kenyon Drake at the running back position, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, and Deontay Johnson at wide receiver. Hayden Hurst and Jonnu Smith are the tight ends. And then the Dolphins defense. That rounds out the week 2 contrary 10 from me. And I hope to, come back and see you guys have some success off of these players, but definitely come back in week 3 and give you 10 more players that I'm going to be looking at for week 3 slate. But make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. That's how you're going to be able to get to this content. So subscribe, like the video, appreciate all the love, and then follow the DJ Nation podcast, DJ Nation Pod on Twitter. Listen to us as we put out a weekly breakdown of the main slate every week. Until then, I'll see you guys in the chats. I'll see you guys on Twitter, and get that money. Peace.